All right, hello and welcome. My name is Mike Reichert. I'm the technical director for the City of Fort Wayne Radio Shop. Today we're going to talk about radio communications for the Allen County Fire Departments. Um, Throughout this presentation, we're going to talk about several different topics. A couple of points I want to hit on is we're going to talk about a general overview of the Fort Wayne Allen County 800 megahertz radio systems. And I say systems because there are two systems in Fort Wayne and Allen County. We'll also talk about the basic function of the APX 6000 XE portable radios, your handheld radios. Those are the majority of the radios you now have in your departments. Your departments also have the Motorola APX N50 handheld radios. I think typically most departments got anywhere between 6 to maybe a dozen of those. They really do operate pretty much the same, but we will talk about those in the presentation as well. We'll also talk heavily about talk group or channel usage. I use the term talk group. Technically, in a 700, 800 megahertz radio system, what you and I are used to for channels, as you select what channel you're going to operate on, Ops 11, Ops 14, County Fire Dispatch. In the 800 world, they're actually known as talk groups. And I bring that up because if you do interoperability work with other counties, they may use the term talk groups instead of channels. Old habits have kind of died hard here in Fort Wayne and Allen County, and we still use the term channels. But talk group or channel, we're really talking about the same thing. But I just want to hit that home so that if you do travel to Whitley County or DeKalb County for an interoperability run, if they happen to say, hey, do you have this talk group, you'll know what they mean. They mean a channel. So we'll talk heavily about your layout in your radios, what channels you have, and what they generally get used for on a day-to-day basis. So with that said, as I mentioned, we actually are fortunate here in Fort Wayne, Allen County. We have two 800 megahertz P25 trunked radio systems. P25 is the national standard for communication systems. The P25 systems can work with any P25 radio. So while we typically use Motorola radios here, if some of you remember, we can use a Johnson P25 radio or a Kenwood P25 radio on this system. That's what the P25 standard is. Again, two systems. The first one I'm going to talk about is what we consider the public safety system. For you, your everyday communications, that is the main system. That's what we're going to talk about as your main system. That system is a 4-site simulcast radio system. We have towers on Lake Avenue, Crawford Road, West State, and actually at the General Motors plant. So it's a 4-site simulcast system. Simulcast in a basic term means all of those towers work together. When you transmit, all 4 of those towers transmit, or all 4 of those towers receive together. That gives us better saturated coverage within Fort Wayne and Allen County. Again, all of the public safety agencies within Allen County are on that system. So Fort Wayne Fire, Fort Wayne Police, the Sheriff, TRA, the PFW Police, and of course the Allen County Fire Departments, just to name a few, operate on that system 99.9% of the day. We also, again, are fortunate that we have a second 800 megahertz radio system. This system is the main for our public service agencies. I say main for them, but it would be your backup system. If the public safety system would have a catastrophic failure, we can actually have you switch pretty seamlessly over to the public service system so that you could still have day-to-day communications. The public service system is a P25 trunked 1-site system. It's just a single site system. And again, day to day, all of our public service agencies operate on that. So everybody from the Fort Wayne Parks Department to street lighting, to the water department, to the county building maintenance team uses that system as their main system day to day. But it does serve as the backup for all public safety agencies in Allen County. Just very briefly here, this is actually a screenshot of both 800 megahertz systems. The first 3 lines in that grid are the public safety system, and the second or the last 2 lines in that grid are the public service system. I just show this because a trunked radio system, what a trunked radio system means, if you happen to focus on what is base station 12 or square 12 up in the top second line, you'll see a conversation that's happening on FW Radio Shop with my ID, 751 Riker. As I was transmitting, when we captured this information, I was on that physical base station or frequency. When I dekeyed and retransmitted again in this line, you'll see that I'm actually on physical base station 15, or in line 3 of that grid. That's what a trunking system does. Trunking system takes, in our case, 18 physical frequencies, and it has a smart controller behind it, always filling in those empty paths so that we can actually, instead of having just 18 conversations, we have almost 160 talk groups on the radio systems. So we can fit all of that traffic into essentially 18 pipes, or 18 paths, if you will. That is what a trunked radio system is and how it works. I just bring that up in case you want to know what a trunk system is, but really there's no importance to that. But what I do want to hit on that you do need to understand from the system standpoint, the system has a couple of different failures, a couple of different methods of failure and operation. And this is what I need everybody to understand. So on a normal day, the system is operating in something called wide area trunking. Don't really need to know that, but on a good day, everything's fine. We are in the wide area trunking mode. However, our first level of failure is something called site trunking. This may affect you as a user on the system. Site trunking will appear as a message on your radio. You'll see it flash in your display as site trunking. Typically, though, this failure only affects folks in the dispatch centers. It does affect their dispatch console operation. So if we're in site trunking, the thing to keep in mind is that the dispatchers are maybe slow to respond. There's a reason for that. They don't have their normal fancy bells and whistles and push buttons and things to communicate with you. They may be typing one-handed and trying to run the radio now one-handed, things of that nature. So keep that in mind, that dispatch is probably the one that's affected by this the most. If we're in site trunking, just listen for further instructions from the dispatch center. Typically, they already have us as the radio shop on the phone, and we're triaging or troubleshooting the radio system to see what the issue is and how long the issue may exist. And then we will give the dispatch centers further instructions should we need to switch to a backup channel or have the users do something further in the field. What's important to note, when we're in the site trunking mode, your emergency or panic buttons still work as normal. We're going to talk heavily about the panic or emergency button functions here later in the presentation. But again, in site trunking, I want you to understand that, again, your emergency buttons will work on the Fort Wayne radio system. So again, if you see site trunking, just keep in mind dispatch may have one hand tied behind their back, but listen for instructions from them, and just keep in mind that your panic buttons do work. The second level of failure is something known as fail-soft. This mode will affect everyone on the radio system. So everyone in the field and the dispatchers will be affected by this. You in the field should do a couple of different things. If we go in the fail-soft mode, your radio will flash fail-soft, and then you will hear this annoying beep every 10 seconds. That is a system-generated tone. I cannot change that. That is to let you know we are operating in a very reduced resource method of operation. So if we go into fail-soft, if you are scanning on your radios, you should immediately turn the scan off. And you should return to your home channel or the channel you're assigned to. So whether that's County Fire Dispatch or you're on a fire ground scene and assigned to Ops 11, you should stay put there during that operation. Most importantly, to remember, your panic buttons, your emergency buttons will not work in the fail-soft mode. We have had enough of a failure in fail-soft that we've lost lots of the controller information in the background, so we cannot process emergencies. So again, fail-soft, turn scan off, return to your home channel, listen for further instructions from the dispatch center, and keep in mind that your emergency buttons or panic buttons will not work. The last level of failure is something you may see on your radio that says out of range. It's important to keep in mind out of range can appear for one of two reasons. First of all, it could just be a signal or coverage problem. There is, I'll give you an example. You could walk into the General Motors plant, and depending on how deep you are in the General Motors plant, if you can't hear or receive from one of our tower sites, your radio may go out of range. Doesn't mean the system failed, it just means that handheld radio can't communicate with the nearest tower site. So if you're in a building or construction, heavy construction like that, you show out of range, you should compare with another user. Are they out of range? Check with the engine or the apparatus outside. Are they out of range? If they're not out of range, then chances are it's just a signal problem. Could be an interference problem. GM, for example, has a lot of robotic equipment. A lot of that equipment does put off stray RF that can interfere with our radios. Another example the Fort Wayne Fire Department deals with is the Kettler Hall location of Purdue Fort Wayne. Kettler Hall's first floor has hundreds of computers in a lab. Depending on where you're at walking through that lab, you can get an out of range signal or distorted or broken traffic, and it's actually the interference from all of those computers being powered up. The downtown library has several pump stations down in the basement and sub-basement of it. Same issues there. Those motors are actually throwing off interference that can affect your radios. So again, you should compare with the apparatus, and it could just be a signal problem. But obviously, if you compare with the apparatus outside is also showing out of range, then chances are we've had a total system failure. If that is the case, again, compare with other radios. If you all concur and the apparatus or the mobile radio in that apparatus shows out of range, chances are we've had a total system failure. At that point, and we'll talk about this more in the future, County Fire does have a backup dispatch channel. It is labeled with the letters BU, and I'll show you where that's at in your radio later in this presentation. At that point, you should switch to that backup channel. This puts you on that second radio system we talked about previously, your backup radio system, should we have a catastrophic failure. So again, normal day-to-day operation is wide area trunking. The next level of failure is site. Below that is fail-soft, and then finally is out of range. So those are the key importances of the radio system, the failure modes and operating modes that I want you to take away from this slide. Okay, next we're going to talk about the radio itself and transmitting on the radio. I'll take a radio here, for example. When you're transmitting from the radio, microphone placement is the key. If you're using a remote speaker mic or the radio, you should always talk across the mic. Talking directly into the mic may be fine for some people, but sometimes this can sound overly loud to dispatchers, so you may get popping noises or S's or just syllables that aren't pronounced very, very well. So it is best to talk across the microphone, whether it's the microphone on the front of the radio or the microphone here. Keep in mind that this radio actually has two microphones on it. There is a front microphone here. There's also a rear microphone here. Motorola has a unique technology that this radio is noise canceling. When you use the push to talk button on the side of the radio here and talk into the radio this way, both microphones are live. It's listening to your voice and also listening to the background noise, and it can decipher the background noise from your voice and actually help cancel that noise background. Your remote speaker mics actually have two microphones here, and it does the exact same thing. So if I use the push to talk button here to talk into the remote speaker mic, again, talk across the mic, and the mic has a noise canceling algorithm to help drown out background noise such as saw noise or engine noise or things of that nature. When you transmit on the radio, you should speak in a loud, clear, and controlled voice to maximize your audio quality. I use this example all the time. Perfect example is the Fort Wayne Police Department. We'll have an officer come up and he'll give a 60-second dissertation about a dead squirrel in the road. He's doing this as he's talking on the radio, trying to talk across the speaker mic. Dispatch can't hear him very well. They're waiting for him to finish. So the first thing the dispatcher comes up and says, Charles 243, repeat your traffic. So now that officer starts yelling into his microphone, which now has taken it to the other end of the spectrum. Now it's distorted and the dispatcher still can't understand him. The dispatcher comes back, Charles 243, I still couldn't understand your traffic. Next thing you know, you have a pissing match between the dispatcher and the unit in the field. That can be simply avoided just by transmitting into the radio properly. I get when you're on a combat scene, on a fireground scene, you may be crawling through an attic or using a pike pull or whatever. But keep in mind, the better audio that you can give to the dispatcher or those around you, the better they can provide you help if you need that. So again, transmit into the radio in as much of a loud, clear, and controlled voice as you can. Transmit across the microphone, and it should be within a couple of inches of your face. Something to keep in mind for the fire service. Since these radios are digital radios, when you use those with your SCBAs, it is very helpful to practice this in-house. Put your SCBA on, have somebody take a radio to receive, transmit from the radio. Depending on your voice, whether you're male or female, SCBA on, microphone placement may be different for every one of you. Some, the audio sounds best with the microphone near the face mask of the SCBA. Some actually sound better down closer to your throat or neck. Practice this in-house and see where that best audio quality is. The SCBA, obviously, as you're breathing, generates some odd noise that the radio will pick up. And depending on if you're male, female, if you have a loud voice or a soft voice, that audio is going to sound differently. So practice that, move the microphone around, work with somebody in the station, see what sounds best for you, and then put that into practice when you're on the fireground scene. So again, practice that with your SCBA. When you transmit from the radio too, there's a radio identifier that is sent from the radio into dispatch. Engine 245D Delta or engine 245A. All of those seats are typically set up. A is the officer, B and C are the back seats, D is the driver. Some positions may have an extra radio that have an E radio, but every radio has an alias that is sent to dispatch. You may actually accidentally bump the transmit button. Dispatch may come up and say, engine 245, did you have traffic? The second you hit that push to talk button, that identifier, that alias is sent to dispatch, and every radio has a dispatch, or has an alias. So again, that's how dispatch identifies you. If you're assigned a radio for a day and maybe you're sitting on the B seat of Medic 35, you might want to check the alias and make sure it is coming in properly. Or if dispatch comes up as you audibly identify and says, you're Medic 35B, dispatch might tell you, hey, that radio is identifying as Monroeville engine 135. That's an issue. You want to correct that, because if you have to use an emergency button or a panic button later, that's how dispatch identifies you, is that radio identifier. So if a radio got misplaced or moved seats, that's important to know. We'll talk about this more later, but in the back of the alias, we have programmed the assignment of those radios. So again, check that when you come on first thing in the shift. Make sure that your seat and your radio match. And that's important, because if you have to declare a mayday or some urgent traffic or hit that emergency button, it is important that we can identify you as quickly as possible to get you the help you need. So on the other side of that is receiving on the radio. Reception is very much like transmit. So if you're in a heavily constructed building, a manufacturing facility, maybe the traffic from dispatch or from your engine outside, whatever the case may be, sounds broken or distorted or something we call digibabble, almost sounds like a skipping CD. One of the first things you can do is take a couple of steps, left or right. Maybe you're standing next to some manufacturing equipment or some heavy electrical equipment. Move away from that, because it can generate interference. Location, 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 we say. The Fort Wayne Allen County system does cover very well in Fort Wayne Allen County, but other outside items can affect that. So again, radio antenna placement. The radio works best if the antenna stays vertical. Horizontal, the radio will work, but the radios are actually designed to propagate RF while that antenna is vertical. So again, keeping the radio vertical as much as possible will help. Something also to keep in mind, depending on where you wear the radio, if you wear it on your hip. Believe it or not, reception or transmission, if dispatch says you're broken or it sounds digital, whatever the case may be, take the radio off your hip and try and transmit from the radio. Believe it or not, moving that antenna 18 inches could make all the difference in the world, because RF also propagates with better height. So that's something to keep in mind. You can take that off your hip, use the radio up here. If you have that on your hip and you're trying to transmit also from the handheld while you're in the vehicle, keep in mind that antenna is 2 inches from your body and maybe 2, 3, or 4 inches from a metal door panel. That can affect your transmit range as well. So again, keep that in mind. Obviously, if you're in a vehicle, you should use that mobile radio to transmit from, but if you're transmitting from the handheld for some reason, keep that in mind. Placement of the radio for transmit and receive is key, is critical. So just to review that, we talked about improving coverage. Radio works best when the antenna is straight up and down. You can take a couple of steps in any direction and try again. If you're in a building, especially heavy construction, if you can move toward a window, that's great. Or if you're in a heavy manufacturing facility, if you can step away from manufacturing equipment, electrical equipment, things of that nature. The microphone on the handheld is noise canceling. Like I said, put it directly in front of the mouth before speaking. I talked about talking across the microphone, but in some very rare cases, if you have a lot or a loud background noise, let's say you're standing on the tarmac at Fort Wayne International Airport with jets running and things, it may be necessary that you actually have to put the microphone in front of your mouth. That's a very rare case, but again, depending on the situation you're in, it is possible. And finally, I'm going to mention this, never modify the radio in any fashion. And I have an example there, short antennas. The Fort Wayne Police Department actually has a policy against this. The Allen County Sheriff's Department, I believe, has a memo issued to all of their officers. Short antennas, while I get with the radio and the antenna is long, and depending on where you wear the radio, if you wear it up in a bunker coat or maybe on a vest or something, yes, the antenna is poking you, it's in your way. It is my job to give you the best device to transmit and receive from. That antenna gives the best signal I can out of any antenna available. If you put a short antenna on this, believe it or not, it can reduce the transmit and receive range by up to 40%. Again, while the system covers very well in Fort Wayne and Allen County, it is best to leave that long antenna on the radio. Okay, we're going to talk about the actual APX 6000 XE, which most of them, I believe, are green, yellow, or some cases black in most of your departments. We're going to talk about the controls and how to use the radio itself. So if you look at the slide here, the first control is obviously labeled as the on-off volume control knob. Again, this powers the radio on and off, and it is your volume adjustment for your radio. Just above that to the right is the 3-position ABC switch. To the right of that is the 16-position select knob, where this is going to be used as your channel or talk group select knob. There's an LED indicator squeezed between the channel knob and your orange button, your emergency, your panic button. And if you look just below the 16-position select knob, there's a arrow there that shows a 2-position concentric switch. We'll talk more about that later. That's actually used for your scan feature to turn it on and off. And then there is also a top display to the radio, and we'll go into these controls here more in just a moment. Looking at the front and side of the radio, we'll start at the side of the radio first. There is a top side button. It's actually purple in color. That button will actually affect the lighting and top display, and we'll run through that here shortly. Down below that is your longer push-to-talk button to transmit from the radio. Then we have 2 buttons, side button 1, side button 2, that are down below the push-to-talk button. These buttons are used for nuisance delete and also something called call alert. Call alert is a feature that's not used very often. However, if for some reason dispatch is trying to call somebody in the field and they are not answering, dispatch actually has 2 options. They can page your radio, which your radio then would start to beep and it would show page received, and that's just dispatch trying to inform you that, hey, they're calling you, but for some reason you're not answering. Or dispatch can do something called a private call. A private call would then be received by pressing that bottom side button, and you would be then moved off of that channel to a private conversation mode with dispatch. Again, it is used very rarely, but dispatch does have the capability of using it. And again, that's a private call. So a private call would appear, the radio would beep, your display would show private call, you would press that bottom side button, and then you would initiate that call with dispatch. You are then just talking from you to the dispatcher and vice versa. You are no longer on the particular channel that you were selected to. I mentioned earlier the microphones in the front part of the speaker grill, and the main speaker there is pointed out as well, along with the battery and the battery latches that we'll talk about here more shortly in the presentation about removing a battery. Looking at the rear of the radio, I mentioned earlier that there's a second microphone just to the left of the Motorola logo. Below that, we have the main display, and we'll cover several options with the display shortly. We also have the menu select buttons down below, the button 1, button 2, and button 3, which will select the menus that you see in the display. The home button on the left, and in the middle of that is the four-way navigation button, your up, down, left, and right arrows. And then to the right of that is a data feature button, which I will tell you right now is not used in our configurations or our system. The battery, we'll talk more about this in a moment, but you can see to remove the battery, your thumb and index finger on both battery latches, you press in while pulling down pulling the battery down from the radio itself. When the batteries are new, I will tell you sometimes these are a lot more difficult to get off than it seems. The big important key, and again, when we talk about battery usage, is when you put that battery on to make sure that both of those latches are seated. If they are not both seated, you will experience some very odd operation of the radio. So let's go through some of the controls of the radio. At the top of the radio, on-off volume, channel or talk group selection knob. Orange button is the emergency button. The LED light that will show transmit or receive traffic is here, squeezed between the orange button and the channel select knob. More importantly, I want you to look at the ABC switch that I talked about. The ABC switch is a shortcut for your first three zones. We're currently in Zone A, as you can see here, A County Fire. And I can use the ABC switch then to immediately move to Zone B or to immediately move to Zone C.
County communication.
I can also change zones by using the hot menu key here. If you notice, I have zone here, which corresponds with button 1. I can use button 1, and now I can use my arrow keys to move through and select what zone I want, and I will select zone F here for TAC. My menu option has changed. I have now select and exit. I will select, and I am now in zone F. So the first three zones are quickly accessible from the top of the radio via the ABC switch, or I can use the menu option for the zone here on the back of the menu display. As you see, if I use the left-right keys, I can toggle through multiple other menu options, and we'll talk about those here now. This radio has zone, we have battery. The battery menu will just give you information about the battery. It's great that it's there, but if we're troubleshooting a problem here at the radio shop, we may, if we have you on the phone, ask you to give us this information. Here we have nuisance delete, which we'll talk about scan here in just a moment. We can set a clock. If you want to set the clock in the radio, you're welcome to. Scan list, this is how we program scan. So if I select the scan list SCNL menu option, I can now edit my scan. I can toggle through and I can find the channels I want. I'm all the way in zone F through E, D. I'm going to get back to zone A. We'll start with County Com. Since I'm highlighted on County Com, you see the Z that's up here. That Z indicates if it's in the scan list or not. With the Z there, it's actually already in the scan list of this particular radio. I'm going to arrow down to Southwest. The Z is there. It is in the scan list. Ops 11 in the scan list. I can use the DEL key to delete that from the scan list. You'll see the Z disappears. I can use the select key and select that. The Z shows back up. It is back in the scan list. I can move throughout the radio and add or delete whatever channels I want to that scan list. Here this shows Ops 18 is not in the scan list. I can hit select. I can't add that to the scan list. Ops 17 is in the scan list. I've added command to the scan list. Once I get the scan list set up the way I want it, I can hit the home key. And then back on the top of the radio, if you remember, I talked about the 2-position concentric switch. Scan off and scan on. I can flip this to the right. The radio gave me a tone. The Z appears. I am now scanning that scan list that I programmed into the radio. Turn the scan off. I flip the Z or the concentric switch back. The Z disappears. Scan is now off. Keep in mind when you're scanning, typically whatever channel you have selected with your channel knob is your priority channel. There are some caveats about that with the radio system that I'll explain later, but typically this is your priority channel of your scan list, whichever channel you're actually selected to. If I go back to the scan list menu, when I go in here, select and delete, we talked about that, to select and add channels. There's also another button that says RCL for recall. I can page through the menu to find where the Z's are, or if I want to know what's in my current scan list, if I use recall, it will immediately jump and show me every channel that's in the scan list. As you can see, I'm paging through, as earlier, those channels that were in the scan list. So recall is a shortcut way to see what you have in your scan list, and then you can delete or select additional channels to modify the scan list. The home key will take me back out of that menu. Next option is Bluetooth. These radios are set up for Bluetooth, that you can add a Bluetooth accessory. I will tell you we have demoed Bluetooth accessories throughout the city and county. While Bluetooth accessories have a use, I really don't recommend using them. Unless you are 100% sure you can keep that Bluetooth item in pristine condition, keep the batteries charged, things of that nature. Keep in mind you're using a mission critical device. While Bluetooth again has its uses, I really recommend that you use a physically wired remote speaker mic with the radio. Using the left and right arrow keys, I can arrow over, and I have a couple other informational menu items. Wi-Fi. I can press this, and I can look at Wi-Fi capabilities of the radio. We're going to talk more about Wi-Fi here in just a moment with the Motorola Smart Connect feature. And then finally, there is an info button here that I can take a look at and get radio information and other items of the radio. This is typically used for the radio shop for troubleshooting issues you may be having with the radio. And again, to review, the top left button I mentioned, the purple button, if I momentarily press that, that turns my backlight on and off, both the top display as well as the back display. However, if I press and hold that purple button, it flips the top display 180 degrees. So depending on how you're using or how you're wearing the radio for the day, you can flip that top display so that you can read that whether it's sitting in front of you on a desk or if you're wearing that on your hip so the display text displays correctly. So again, a momentary press lights up the backlight display, and a long press will flip that display 180 degrees. If you look at the back display, the full display on the radio, there are several different status icons that appear on the radio. Some of them I will talk about that are important to the operation, and others we're going to skip over because they're really not used or critical for your operational needs. So the first couple here, the receiving and transmitting, you'll see the antenna with either the green arrows or the red arrows. Obviously that tells you if the radio is receiving traffic or if it's transmitting traffic. Also in the top line of those statuses, in the top left corner will be your, in the top right corner of your radio will be the battery display. Obviously the battery display works just as it would on your cell phone and shows you what kind of battery level or battery indication that you have left in that battery for the day. Next, we have the receive signal strength indicator. This is an important one that's in the top left corner of the display. It works again just like your cell phone would. It shows you how much signal you're receiving from the radio system. This can help you troubleshoot items. If you're having an issue inside of a building trying to transmit or receive, you can take a quick look at your receive signal strength indicator and see if you are maybe at 1 bar or 0 bars. But again, you can take a couple of steps, move toward a window, whatever the case may be. But it's there just so you know what kind of signal you're receiving from the radio system. Also in the status indicators, you will see typically an H that is always in the display. If you see that, it just means the radio power is set to high power. You can just ignore this the status indicator. The Z that we talked about is scan. When the Z appears in the top display, you're in scan, or if you're in the program scan list mode, when the Z appears, it is to indicate that you are adding a channel or that channel is added into your scan list. One of the other important items there in the top of the display, you may see, is a circle with a line through it. This indicates that the radio is on a secure channel or an encrypted channel. We're going to talk more about that here in just a minute. Most of the channels in the Fort Wayne Allen County system are encrypted. A few are not. Some are what we consider clear, and we'll talk about the difference of that. You won't see it on your radios necessarily, but if you ever pick up a Sheriff's Department radio or a Fort Wayne Police Department radio, you may see the circle with a line through it and something called AES below it. AES is a higher encryption protocol level. It is a hardware encryption protocol. AES is the federal standard. We use AES, for instance, in vice narcotics, the SWAT team, our gang units, things of that nature. Like I said, you won't see it on your radios, but you may see that on a different radio somewhere throughout the city or county. Another one of the icons that you'll see that's either solid or not flashing, or it may flashing, is the location signal, your GPS signal. We're going to talk heavily about GPS here in just a moment. I'll refer back to that shortly. One of the other items that may appear and disappear is one that shows IP, and the IP may have a couple of squares below it, or IP may show a couple of arrows below it. Your radio is not only a voice communications device, it is also a data communications device, and IP shows that there's IP traffic going on between the radio and the system. You can typically ignore this, but I just mentioned it because we do get a lot of calls about the IP icon appearing and disappearing. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, the LED indicator that's on the top of the radio between the channel selection knob and the emergency button. Solid red, the radio is transmitting. If it's rapidly blinking red, the radio has failed to self-test. Solid yellow is a channel is busy. That's typically only on on-site channels. But solid green is showing that the radio is powering up. And I mentioned a couple of other things in the back of the display. If you declare an emergency or trip your panic button, it will show an orange bar with a line through it that shows emergency. Out of range can show up, as I talked earlier, if we have had a catastrophic system failure, or maybe you have completely lost signal because of your location, will show with a bar with a red line through it. I also mentioned briefly about private call and call alert, even though those are rarely ever used. If the radio is private called or paged, it will actually show a green bar with a line through it as well. So we're going to talk about encryption. Again, as I mentioned, most of the channels on the Fort Wayne Allen County system are encrypted, with the exception of our TAC channels 1 through 8, the Allen County Fire Dispatch channel, and Ops 11 through 17. Those channels that I just mentioned are not encrypted. They are clear. It's done for a couple of different reasons. Keeping the channels clear helps with interoperability. Obviously, you as the Allen County Fire Departments make a lot of runs with other agencies outside of this county. Most of those agencies do not have encryption. So to communicate with them on your ops channels and your dispatch channel, those channels remain clear on our radio system so that you can communicate with them seamlessly. The majority of the channels, Fort Wayne Police channels, Fort Wayne Fire, the Sheriff's Department, they are encrypted. While they do have interoperability partners, most of their partners, such as the DEA, ATF, FBI, all have encryption capable radios, so they can share those encryption algorithms so they can stay encrypted because of the sensitive information that they are transmitting. So again, keep in mind, those channels that are not encrypted are TAC 1 through 8 in the Allen County Fire Dispatch, OPS 11 through 17 channels. Your OPS 18 and 19 is encrypted, and those would be, hopefully you never have to use those, but maybe on the rare case that you end up on a scene with a fatal fire or a fatality, that you want to move over to an encrypted channel to limit third parties picking that information up or the media picking that up. That's exactly what the encryption algorithm is for. We encrypted this system several years ago to end scanner land and phone apps and things of that nature. Believe it or not, I traveled all around the country when we project managed this radio system, and you would not believe the instances I found where we had citizens that went to Florida as a particular case that sticks out in my mind. Gentleman actually lit his house on fire, went and perched himself up in a tree with an automatic rifle, called the fire department. Fire department shows up. He immediately picked off 2 of the 4 firefighters on that engine. Sheriff's department showed up after the fire department started screaming for help. He got the first deputy as well, and it took roughly 30 to 40 minutes for them to neutralize him. Sure enough, once they got him neutralized and got him down, he had a scanner app on his phone with an earbud in his ear that he was listening and knew exactly which direction these guys were coming from in the whole 9 yards. Encryption, a lot of people will say, well, you're hiding information. That really is not the case. Encryption, unfortunately, is a necessary evil. As I said, I traveled all around the country and I heard story after story after story that unfortunately 10% of the population, or our criminals, if you will, are using the technology against us. And that doesn't matter if that's law, fire, EMS. I heard cases that affected everyone, so I really recommended that we encrypt the system. Yes, I get it. You can't use a scanner, but there's a reason you can't use that scanner, and it's to protect you day to day as you're out there serving the public. Because unfortunately, we have people that want to do harm. So that is why the system is encrypted. We actually use 2 levels of encryption on the system. We use a low level and a high level encryption. I just mentioned the high level, the AES type encryption. We use that again, mostly on the law enforcement side for our SWAT teams, our EST teams, vice narcotics, gang, the federal agencies I mentioned, ATF, FBI, DEA, all use the AES type hardware encryption. We use the low level software encryption on the majority of the other channels. Because it's cheap and we're just trying to get rid of scanner land. And so far, we put the system on in February 2014. We check about 4 times a year to see if we've had any violations on the encryption, and to this day, knock on wood, we've been pretty fortunate, and the system remains secure. But that is why we use encryption on this system. So, talking about scanners, the bullet point mentions scanners. Scanners cannot monitor our talk groups or channels, with the exception of TAC 1 through 8 and those Allen County Fire channels or talk groups I talked about. If you were to go out and buy a digital P25 scanner today and program the right information in it, you can scan those first 8 TAC channels and then the Allen County Dispatch and that first set of OPS talks groups, OPS 11 through 17. But you will not be able to hear the remaining channels that are encrypted. Just as a side note, the media here in town, all of the TV stations actually are authorized to own handhelds that have to be purchased through us. They are limited on the channels that they have. They currently have the ACPD dispatch channel, the Fort Wayne PD 4 main dispatch channels, and the Fort Wayne Fire dispatch channel in those radios. They do not have County Fire, at least currently. Again, though, County Fire still is scannable on an 800 megahertz scanner. Going to move along and talk about panic, or the emergency button. The emergency button comes into play, obviously, in your case, if you have a firefighter down, or maybe a firefighter goes through a floor, or has a medical emergency, or whatever the case may be. The panic button makes you the #1 user on the system, and the reason I say that is this. Typically, if you're out on a fire ground scene and firefighter A is giving an update because the roof looks like it's about ready to cave in. What you don't know it is 3 feet or 5 feet behind you is another firefighter that just went to the floor, and you're still giving your report on the air about the roof. That firefighter, if he obviously tries to key up and just verbally call a mayday or urgent traffic or whatever your policy or protocol is, won't be able to get on the air because that other firefighter is still on the air giving his report about the roof. If that firefighter that's in trouble hits the emergency button and then transmits on his microphone, that firefighter will knock firefighter A off the system, and the firefighter that declared the emergency will be heard by the other users on that channel as well as the dispatch center. So the emergency button comes into play very importantly if you have a true emergency or you are a firefighter down. It is best, in my opinion, to hit that emergency button, and then if you can speak or if you're capable of speaking or getting to the microphone, then give your location, give what happened, so on and so forth, to give the dispatchers and your on-scene command as much information as possible so that they can find and rescue you in the shortest time possible. So it is important to note that when you fire an emergency button, and we're going to talk about your channels that you use 99% of the time, if you're on the county communications channel or ops 11 through 19, when you press that emergency button, you stay on that channel. So what I mean by that is this: if you're on a fireground scene and you're using ops 12 and you press the emergency button and come up and say mayday, 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 that traffic will be heard by dispatch on ops 12, as well as all of those other firefighters on the scene that are on ops 12. So that way everybody can hear the information you're giving, so again, that they can provide rescue to you in the shortest amount of time possible. If you're on other channels in the Allen County Fort Wayne system, it will actually revert to county communications. So if you're over on the East Central TAC channel, for example, and for some reason you hit or declare an emergency there, it will actually revert you over, even though your radio shows it selected to East Central, it will revert you over to county communications. So while you're in an emergency, if you transmit during that emergency, the dispatcher will hear you on the county dispatch channel or county communications. Keep in mind, I'm going to show you a diagram here in a minute. Your emergency buttons are only active on Fort Wayne, Allen County trunked radio system channels. You have a lot of channels in your radio. You have some channels that are on the IPSC or the statewide system that we'll talk about more in depth here in the future. You also have some conventionals or on-site or direct channels. Emergency buttons will not work on any of those channels. It is important to know that. And here in the PowerPoint presentation, I will show you, I have highlighted the channels in orange of where your emergency buttons will work. And as you can see, there's actually 2 pages to this. I'll show you the second page because you have multiple zones, multiple channels in this radio. These channels are the channels on the Fort Wayne Allen County system where your emergency buttons work. You still have other channels that are on the IPSC system or conventional channels or on-site channels that those emergency buttons will not operate. There's lots of technical and system limitations to this that I'm not going to go into, but when you're on our system, we have your alias or ID information, and we have that communication between the radio and the trunk system to let us know you have an emergency. And I will page through to show you the second or the last 4 zones that are in your radio. But again, those are statewide or direct or on-site channels that we cannot get emergency information from your radio. So keep that in mind, especially if you're working in an interoperability run with an outlying county or a different agency. If you're over on their channels, your emergency buttons will not work. Now, what we're going to do next is actually go through sending an emergency to dispatch and exactly the process and protocol you should put in place to communicate with dispatch should you have an emergency. Okay, so we're going to go through the process of how to send in an emergency and the proper way to clear the emergency. As I mentioned earlier, we have an emergency button on the top of the radio and an emergency button on top of the microphone. They work essentially the same way. What I want you to pay attention to is this. When I declare this emergency, I'm going to press the button and hold it until I hear a beep. And it's hard to hear, but if you listen enough, you're going to actually hear one beep followed by 5 additional beeps. There's one beep and a very slight pause and 5 additional beeps. 5 additional beeps. That's actually the radio and the radio system giving you information. When I press this button, if you listen, you're going to hear that first beep. That's the radio telling me, hey, I'm sending that emergency into communications. The 5 beeps that you hear after that is actually the radio system telling you, I have received that emergency and I am lighting up all the dispatch consoles and all the dispatch centers that have this channel. So you can rest assured when you hear those 5 beeps come back, or those additional beeps, that emergency has made it into the system and it's making the consoles scream, and somebody should be with you shortly. So I'm going to go through this process and I'm going to trip the emergency button. Obviously, this is for testing or an accidental or whatever you want to call this. Typically, both communication centers, when you send an emergency in, they're going to look at the identifier of your radio. This radio we're using happens to be Fire 102. Communications is going to come up on the air and say, Fire 102, are you signal 105? Signal 105 is asking, are you okay? If it's an actual accidental trip or whatever the case may be, I'm testing, the response from you should be signal 106, meaning I am okay. If you give them any other answer than that, they may think you're in distress and they should send you additional help. So again, 105 from the dispatcher, if everything's okay, you want to respond to 106. If I come up and just say, hey, I'm okay, and this and that happened, the dispatcher may raise an eyebrow and send an additional unit or the police department to check on you because they have no idea you possibly have a gun to your head and you're being told that say you're okay. I'm verbally saying I'm okay, but I didn't say 106. So the dispatcher should catch up on that and then send additional help if needed. So that's why the exchange of 105 and 106 is important in this case that we're testing or an accidental trip. So again, we're going to trip the emergency button here and a lot's going to happen here in this process. So I'm going to trip it from the remote speaker mic. So I'm going to press and hold.
Southwest Fire 102, signal 105.
Fire 102, 106.
706, reset radio.
And he asked me to reset my radio. To reset the radio properly, and the only way to do this is press and hold the emergency button till you hear the long tone and then release. Old radios, and when I say old, I'm talking 15, 20 years ago, old radios, you actually turn the power off and turn the radio back on. Do not do that with the 800 megahertz radios. It may appear to have cleared the emergency on your side or cleared it from the radio. It does not clear it on the system or down in dispatch. So again, if you trip that emergency button after the dispatch acknowledges you, and that's important, even if it's an accidental trip, do not reset that button until you make that exchange with dispatch. Because if you reset that button and then you can't hear dispatch call you, they're going to assume you're in trouble because you're not answering. So again, trip the button. Dispatch should ask you if you're 105. You can let them know, no, you're not, or declare your Mayday or whatever the case may be. Or if it was an accidental trip or training, you can let them know 106. They'll acknowledge 106, reset the radio, press and hold the emergency button, and then the radio resets and clears the emergency. If you noticed on the fired radios, the radios that you have here with the XE speaker mics, your white flashlight begins to flash. It actually flashes 3 dots, 3 dashes, and 3 dots. It's actually spelling out SOS in Morse code. So the white flashlight should trip when you trip a emergency from your fire radio. If you have the green or the XE version microphone, that is not the case on the N50 version, as you don't have an actual flashlight or white light on the radio itself. So again, I'll run through this one more time. And again, if you heard it, I know it's quick, but when I press that to declare an emergency, there's one beep, there's a slight pause, and there's 5 beeps. Again, that's that exchange that the radio sent the emergency in. The 5 beeps back is telling you the radio system received it and somebody should be with you shortly. So we will do this one more time.
Southwest Fire 102, signal 105.
106, thank you.
Here, 106.
And that's the proper way to send and end an emergency. And as I mentioned earlier in the PowerPoint presentation, make sure you're familiar with where those, which channels your emergency can be used on. Again, emergencies will only work on the Fort Wayne, Allen County radio system talk groups or channels. And again, those are highlighted in the PowerPoint presentation. They're highlighted in orange. With that said, we're going to move on to another feature of the radio, and that is GPS. Both your newer models of radio that you received are capable of GPS, and those radios are capable of sending in those GPS coordinates to the 911 center. It is important to note the 911 center, the Allen County 911 center, has Motorola Aware. That's where those coordinates are mapped out and sent. The New Haven Dispatch Center does not have access to Aware. They have not bought an Aware license as of yet. I'm hoping that may change in the future, but right now the Fort Wayne Allen County 911 Center does have Aware and can map out locations of the radios. And again, that's for both models of the new radios that you have, the APX N50 and the APX 6000 XE. As I said, those report to Motorola Aware. It is important to note we don't do real-time GPS from the handheld radios. The radios update their location a couple of different ways. Aware pulls the location every 10 minutes from the radio. So every 10 minutes it's on a timer. It pulls the location from that radio. Or if the user transmits, if you use your PTT button to transmit, it will send a fresh coordinates in to the Aware system. And then thirdly, if you do declare an emergency, it will now almost update the radio in real time. It will send emergency coordinates in every 30 seconds for up to 10 minutes so that we can get a real-time or close to real-time location on you should you declare an emergency. It is important to note in the fire service, GPS is a line of sight technology. There are roughly 46-ish satellites that the federal government has in the sky that provide GPS location coordinates. But again, GPS location is a line of sight technology. GPS does not typically work inside of structures or buildings, which obviously on fire grounds, seeing the majority of the runs that you're making, you are probably in a structure. If you're in a lightly constructed home near a window on a first floor, we may be able to get valid GPS coordinates from you. And the way you can tell that is on the back of the radio. And I will show you the example here. I mentioned earlier the status indicators. If you look at the top right corner here, you'll see this satellite icon flashing. That satellite is indicating GPS, and since it is flashing, it is telling me that it does not have valid signal lock with a GPS satellite. So with it flashing, this radio is not going to send in valid coordinates to our system, whether it's pulled, whether it's transmitted from, or whether I hit the emergency, because we are deep inside of our structure here at the radio shop, and I can't get a GPS signal from here. If I were to move into my office, which is on an outside wall with lots of glass, it would take a few seconds and that icon should go solid, indicating I have valid GPS coordinates. So again, the GPS is a tool, the location is a tool, but keep in mind in the fire service, GPS location is a line of sight technology that while you're in structures, you probably will not have valid GPS lock to send coordinates in to the 911 center. And I will show you briefly what that looks like when it comes into the 911 center. Here on the screen is our Motorola Aware system. This is looking at every handheld in the city and county that's capable of GPS, which right now is a majority of the departments. We also have the Spillman runs mapped to this along with a few other items as well. And I will see if I can find an example. Here we go. We're going to look at East Central. As you can see, here are a couple of East Central radios that are powered on and that have valid GPS lock. There's actually a Northwest Fire handheld over here as well. All of the county fire radios appear in a very bright red to dispatch. We try and color code all of these radio icons for different departments. Fort Wayne Fire is actually a very dark red. But again, this gives us an extra hand or an extra tool in the tool bag should you declare an emergency, that we can help narrow down your location. Also important to note, if for some reason your department loses a radio, don't be afraid to tell your command person. Tell your command person as soon as possible, because we can track the radios. The radios do have to be powered on, but we can help track a radio, or maybe you left a radio on the back of an apparatus and then drove off and the thing landed in a curb strip or a field somewhere. We have actually already recovered radios. We've had the system about 2.5 to 3 years on the city side now. We have been able to recover radios as well. It's a long story, but actually Fort Wayne Fire, we had a radio that come up, I don't want to use the word stolen, but misplaced, that a citizen got a hold of. And we actually found the radio in Mishawaka, and we were able to retrieve that radio. So again, if you do lose a radio, it's important to report it to your command. Your command knows how to find us either during or after hours. We have remote access to this system that we can help try and track that radio down. So like I said, don't be afraid to report it. Make sure you report it, because the sooner we get the information, the better chance we've got of recovering a radio. Okay, one of the next items I want to talk about is something new that the Allen County Fire Departments have in both models of their newer radios, something called Motorola Smart Connect. Like I mentioned earlier, the Fort Wayne Allen County system has really pretty good coverage throughout all of Allen County. However, we do have dead spots in certain areas. Smart Connect allows us to utilize Wi-Fi or Verizon LTE for system coverage. So typically on a normal or day-to-day basis, your radio is communicating with our radio towers located around the county. However, if you get into an area that does not have radio coverage, we can use Wi-Fi or LTE, if the radio is capable of it, to get that conversation or that information back into the system. The APX 6000 XEs have Wi-Fi only setup. However, the N50s currently have Wi-Fi and LTE in those radios. So we're going to talk about and focus more on the APX 6000 XE. So inside of the radio, we have several IDs, user IDs and passwords programmed into this radio. We currently have agreements with East Allen County Schools, Northwest Allen County Schools, Southwest Allen County Schools, Canterbury School, and First Presbyterian here in Fort Wayne, that we are utilizing their Wi-Fi systems. The Allen County Sheriff's Department, the Fort Wayne Police Department, has had roughly about 50 limited radios on Smart Connect for about 1.5 years or so. And in some of the schools, they are much larger. And then when they get down into the center of the schools, they don't have good radio system coverage. We've been able to leverage their Wi-Fi systems so that they have full coverage in the school, whether they're using the radio system or the actual Wi-Fi signals in the school. Fort Wayne Community Schools, we have an agreement with. However, there's a long technical story behind that. We don't exactly have our radios set up with them, but I am working on that. If there are other buildings that this could be useful, please let your command know and have your command contact me. We are working with Parkview Hospital, the Lutheran Hospital chain. Once IU gets settled into Fort Wayne, we will work with them as well for some additional Smart Connect coverage. The Sheriff's Department has asked me about BF Goodrich and some other areas. It's not as easy as it sounds. It's not like walking in with your cell phone into Starbucks and getting on their free Wi-Fi. It does not work that way. There's a lot of technical information in the background and security information that has to be provided. Some IT departments are willing to work with us, some are not. But if you have a location that could benefit from the Smart Connect, from the Wi-Fi, again, notify your command, have your command notify us, and we can work with them and see just exactly what we can do. So, when operating on the Wi-Fi, there's a couple of differences to note with the radio. So we're going to demonstrate how Smart Connect works with the radio. Please don't do this out in the field, but I'm actually going to remove this antenna to simulate losing the signal of the radio system. So if I remove the antenna to again simulate loss of signal, it should take the radio a couple of seconds, but you can see Smart Connect appears. And I was probably talking over it, but there should have been a slight beep. So the radio is now in Smart Connect. When you transmit from the radio, you're going to hear a different push-to-talk tone. It's going to be very short and very high pitched. No matter which push to talk button you used, the radio here or the microphone here, that is just letting you know, hey, you still have communications, but you're on a secondary system. So you don't hear the normal push to talk tone that you normally would using the radio system, but you still have connectivity. So I can key up and talk to communications, Fire 102 communications.
Fire 102.
Radio check, sir.
Fire 102, clear, loud and clear.
Clear, thank you. And as you can see, I'm communicating on that Smart Connect system just like I would the normal radio system. But I'm actually using the Wi-Fi that's here in our radio shop, which is part of the Fort Wayne Allen County network. So every Fort Wayne Allen County building with Wi-Fi, we have set up to use Smart Connect. And I'm actually going all the way out through the internet and back into our radio system so that I'm communicating with all of the users on county communications as well as dispatch, and vice versa. Any traffic would come back into me. So Smart Connect is a very great option to fill in some of those holes, or as I mentioned, a lot of the school districts that have larger buildings and things that our radio system doesn't have 100% coverage into those buildings. Keep in mind too, the radio's priority is to use the radio system, then Wi-Fi, and then LTE. And the reason of that being is a perfect example is Carroll High School. When we demoed this in Carroll High School, I personally had not been in Carroll High School since the 90s. I was out there 2 years ago and could not believe it was the size of Glenbrook Mall. Once we got down into the center of the school, we had very dicey radio system coverage, and honestly, we had no LTE coverage. We had no Verizon, we had no T-Mobile, and we had no AT&T. But the schools, using tablets and e-learning, they have 100% Wi-Fi coverage in all of their buildings. We were able to program a radio up in Smart Connect, and we were able to use Wi-Fi through the center of that building. So again, Smart Connect has some great uses. Keep in mind, Smart Connect and the Wi-Fi technology is not an NFPA approved communication system. So what I'm saying is this, and I'll just pick on Carroll High School again in Northwest Allen County Schools. If you have a full-blown structure fire that you're responding there to, keep in mind that that Wi-Fi system is not on battery backup. It's not on generator. It's not in an approved NFPA fire rated cabinets. So that system may or may not work when you arrive there, depending on the incident. Obviously, for an active shooter, that the school infrastructure is up, the Smart Connect, the Wi-Fi should be up. It should work great if you need it. But again, keep in mind the situation that Wi-Fi systems are not NFPA certified, so they don't have the usual battery backup or fireproof cabinets that they're installed in and things of that nature. And then once Smart Connect, or I'm sorry, once the radio system signal is restored, it takes the radio a couple of minutes because it wants to make sure that the radio system signal is good. But eventually you will see the Smart Connect banner will stop flashing and it will restore to the radio system. And once that happens, we can key up on the radio and you'll hear the normal push to talk tone to let you know that you are back on the radio system and communicating as normal. So again, once the radio system comes back, it's had a couple of minutes to make sure the radio system strength is good. The Smart Connect banner will disappear, letting me know I'm back on the radio system. And you'll notice that the push to talk tone sounds normal, indicating to the user you're back on the standard or the primary radio system and off the Smart Connect connectivity. Next, I want to talk about the batteries on the newer radios. The batteries are not like those of years ago that some of you that have been around for quite a long time, where they developed memory and you needed to let them run completely down and charge them and things of that nature. All of the Motorola batteries have smart technology. There's actually firmware in the batteries, firmware in the radio, and firmware in the charger. They all communicate with each other. So when you're charging a battery, typically 99% of the time when you insert a radio or radio with a battery into a charger, that charger should go solid red. And it takes, depending on how low that battery is, anywhere between 60 to 90 to 120 minutes for that battery to fully charge. You'll see it stay solid red. When that battery comes up to 90% or above, it will start to flash green. And then once that battery's at full capacity or 100%, it will go solid green. And this cycle will happen 99% of the time, day to day, when you insert that battery. However, there are times when you'll insert a battery or the radio with the battery into a charger and you'll see a yellow or orange light appear. This tells you it's going to take that battery through a reconditioning phase. Once that happens, that battery will take anywhere between 8 to 12 hours to finish completely. When you put that battery in, you should leave the battery in the charger. And again, it's going to take that long period of time, 8 to 12 hours, and it will go through and completely drain the battery, recondition it, and then it will eventually go solid red to charge, flashing green at 90%, and then when it's fully charged, it will go solid green to 100%. If for some reason you need the battery right away, and you insert that battery into the charger and it goes yellow or orange, you can quickly pull the battery up and literally count 1 and put it back into the charger. It should go solid red and actually skip the reconditioning phase. I do not recommend that you do this every time it goes into the reconditioning phase. You will take weeks, months off of that battery's life. It needs to recondition. However, though, if you worked a long fire, went home and grabbed a shower and need the battery and the radio back because you got to come back in for your shift, and you need it to charge and it goes yellow or orange, you can pick that battery up, count 1, put it right back into the charger. Should go solid red, and then it will just charge a normal cycle, and then eventually it will go through another reconditioning cycle. But again, you need to let it go through the reconditioning cycle so that battery has the best longevity that it can have. This goes true for whether you're using a 6-bank charger, maybe at the station, or if you have an individual charger assigned to you at home. Again, yellow or orange indicates reconditioning. Solid red is that it's charging. Flashing green is 90% or above, and solid green is it's fully charged or at 100%. You may see a condition where the light will flash green, red, green, red. Typically that indicates that the battery is probably at the end of its life or has an issue, and you should let obviously your command or your radio contact know to get that battery replaced. So with the Allen County Fire Department, you guys have vehicle chargers. The vehicle chargers will flash orange and green, indicating it's due or ready for a reconditioning cycle. At that point, those batteries should be taken out of service or off the apparatus and run through a 6-bank or a single unit charger to have those batteries fully run through the recycling reconditioning phase. Finally, we're going to go through all of the channels in the Allen County Fire radios. I happen to have East Central's template or programming up here as an example. Keep in mind, all of these templates or programming templates are the same, with the exception in Zone A, Channel 3. Since this is an East Central radio, East Central is on Channel 3, or TAC channel is on Channel 3. Obviously, if this was a Northwest radio, the Northwest TAC channel would be on Channel 3, but otherwise, all of the zones and channels should be the same throughout the fleet, whether it's the 6000 XE radio or the APX N50 radio. So I will go through and briefly highlight what the channels are used for and what system they're on to give you a better idea of what you're working with. So here in the red box, Zone A labeled COFD for County Fire Department. Zone A contains the automated dispatch channel, which you are not using yet. The automated dispatch channel will be used in the future. The new fire station alerting mock alert system that you have is capable of connecting to our CAD system to do automated dispatches. If you've not heard this, City of Indianapolis, Marion County uses a like system where as soon as the dispatcher has the proper nature and the proper response plan assigned to it, the CAD information is sent essentially text to speech to the mock alert system, and the mock alert, or what some people call digital Debbie, will actually dispatch the call. So that would be done on the automated dispatch channel once that is in service in the future. Currently though, County Communications, County Dispatch, New Haven Dispatch is operating on the County Com or County Communications channel on Channel 2. Again, as I mentioned, your department's TAC channel is on Channel 3, East Central, Northwest, Northeast, Southeast, so on and so forth. Then we have your operations channels, operations 11 through 19. This is used as your fireground communications channels. Keep in mind, as I mentioned earlier, your county communications and your ops 11 through 17 channels are clear or not encrypted. They are scannable. Operations 18 and 19 are there as encrypted channels. Again, this could be used for sensitive information, fatal fire, whatever the case may be. And then you have a command channel as well that is encrypted if that is needed for internal department communication. You'll see there are a couple of blanks labeled right below that, blank 14 and blank 15. We just put that in there. Motorola doesn't let us skip a channel. Those are just there so that we can insert another channel afterward, which channel 16 is your 7 Fire 64D. That is actually a national operational channel. It is a direct channel, so it is just like an on-site. It's just radio to radio, short range, half a mile-ish or so. That is there in, it is the last channel in every zone to the county fire department radios. This can be used as an on-site channel if for some reason you cannot connect to the operations channels at a site or at a fire ground. You can actually turn over to channel 16, the 7 Fire 64D, and have on-site fire ground communications with each other. And again, as you will notice as we go through the presentation, that channel is the last channel in every radio. Looking at Zone B, the EMS zone, the first 7 channels are TRAS med channels, and they are designated as Med 1 Lutheran, Med 2 Lutheran DuPont, Med 3 DuPont. I'm sorry, Med 2 is Lutheran Downtown, Med 3 is DuPont, Med 4 and 5 are Parkview, which would typically be Parkview Randalia, or Parkview can use one of those as an overflow channel. Med 6 is Lutheran Main again, and Med 7 is PRMC. Again, those are for ambulance to hospital communications only. Again, TRA technically oversees those, and there's an agreement for the Allen County Fire Departments to use those for ambulance to hospital communications here in Allen County. Just below that, we have the hospital North Ops 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 channels. These channels are on the IPSC or state system. Again, emergencies do not work, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, that these are IPSC channels, so your emergencies don't work here. These, while the state says they shouldn't be used for EMS to hospital communications, they are being used more and more that way around the state because there is an issue throughout the state with hospitals having communications on 800. So again, these can be used should you're traveling to other hospitals outside of Allen County. You can use these if need be. And then just below that, the Adams County Ops 6 is a channel that Adams County Memorial Hospital uses for ambulance to hospital communications. It's a dedicated channel that they've given permission to the Allen County Fire Departments to have. And then just below that, the Air Med Landing Zone. This was intended to communicate to the helicopters, Parkview Samaritan, Lutheran Air. It's important to keep in mind that this is just a label. This is actually the CMA 4 channel, Region C Mutual Aid 4 channel. We'll talk about more here further in the presentation, but this can be used for the communication from ground to air ambulance for their landing zone. Zone C, labeled County TAG. The first couple of channels are your department channels. These are encrypted. So East Central, Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, and West Central. Those can be used for department traffic, inter-department traffic, whatever you see fit as well. And again, we just have blank fillers below that. And then again, the 7 Fire 64D or an on-site channel, again, last channel in channel 16 of that zone. Zone D, the Fort Wayne Fire Department zone. Fort Wayne Fire Dispatch, their ops 1 through 8 channels, as well as the Fire Department training channel for the Fort Wayne Fire Department are in that zone. These are all, again, encrypted channels for the Fort Wayne Fire Department. Just below that, we have the TRA channels. The EMS Dispatch is TRA's main dispatch channel, along with EMS Ops 1 and Ops 2. Should they have an event and need assistance, they may use their EMS Ops 1 or 2 for communications. In some more blank fillers and the 7-fire 64D to round out that zone. Zone E is the Allen County Police Department miscellaneous zone. ACFD is the Allen County Sheriff's Department dispatch, along with their info and car channels. Just below that, we have Allen County Highway Management. So you have communication with some of the supervisors with Allen County Highway if you're working with them on an incident. AC Special 1 is an operations channel the county police department can use for special events. Allen County Homeland Security is there as well if you need to work with them. ARF Ops, Air Event are both channels for the Fort Wayne International Airport. Air Event is used in case they do have an incident with an aircraft at the airport that they may need outside help or response to. Typically, the airport will switch over to Air Event. ARF Ops is where their fire gear typically operates. Fort Wayne Special Event is a special event channel or operations channel that the Fort Wayne Police Department uses. This can be used sometimes during the Three Rivers Festival, certain events down at Parkview Field, and incidents of that nature. And then followed by New Haven PD's dispatch channel. And then we rebroadcast NOAA Weather. NOAA Weather actually broadcasts in the VHF range, and we rebroadcast that on 800. This can be useful if we've got severe weather in the area and you want to listen to the NOAA Weather channel. We are rebroadcasting that on the 800 system, so you can actually flip over and use the weather channel information there. Zone F, the tactical channels. These are the Fort Wayne Allen County radio system tactical channels. Every radio in Fort Wayne and Allen County have these channels. What's important to note about this is TAC 1 through 8 are not encrypted. They are clear. TAC 9 through 12 are encrypted. So TAC 1 through 8, we have again in every radio in the city and county. This includes building maintenance, county building maintenance, parks department, street department, the zoo, whoever's got an 800 radio. Those departments have no encryption, so they have TAC 1 through 8. TAC 9 through 12 would be everybody in public safety. So fire, police, sheriff, county fire, animal control. Anybody with an encrypted radio has TAC 9 through 12. It's important to note that the TAC channels, they're located on Zone F, talk groups 1 through 12 in your county fire radios. As I mentioned just a minute ago, TAC 1 through 8, not encrypted, they're clear. TAC 9 through 12 are encrypted. The TAC channels are not for day-to-day use. They're not to just jump on and have traffic back and forth. They're not like a car-to-car channel. If you have a reason to use the TAC channel, contact the supervisor in communications. The supervisor will assign you a TAC channel. They may ask if you need an encrypted channel or a non-encrypted channel. And depending on your event, you can ask for either or. Keep in mind, we only have 4 encrypted TAC channels. Typically, they like to reserve those for traffic fatal incidents, homicides, things of that nature. So if you can get away with using a non-encrypted channel, that would be the best option because we have more of those. But again, if you need an encrypted TAC channel for your event, those are available. But again, don't just jump on one and use one. Make sure that you contact the supervisor in communications and ask for one to be assigned. Perfect example, when we were doing the Luke Bryan tours out on the east side of Allen County, we were using multiple TAC channels. Obviously, we knew about that event way ahead of time. Communications assigned 2, 3, 4 TAC channels, whatever we needed. And we worked over in the TAC channels with all of the agencies that were on site out there. We get sometimes events show up suddenly, but again, if you need an additional TAC channel or need a TAC channel to add to your communications plan for your event, contact the supervisor in communications. As I mentioned before, don't use these for car-to-car traffic. Keep in mind, everything on the system is logged. If you heard me say earlier, all the radios send aliases. We have databases, years worth of information. If you start using that for car-to-car traffic, I guarantee you I will get an email and we'll have to investigate that, and I'm sure your command will get a phone call as to why your personnel did not request a TAC channel properly. So again, they are there to be used for events, but make sure that you request those as needed. So going back into that TAC zone, the F-TAC zone, there are two channels there, repeater and programming. These won't typically be used. However, if you are working a special event with the communications truck or a special detail, possibly with a federal agency, we may use these channels with some additional equipment that we have in our communications vehicle, but on a day-to-day basis, these are not used. Zone G, and probably one of the more important zones here in the radio. I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation that we have two 800 megahertz communication systems. The one that you use day to day 99.9% of the time, and then a backup, which you would consider your backup system. This contains the backup channels, thus all of the channels starting with BU. So as I mentioned earlier, if for some reason you would have your radios go out of range and you concur with your handhelds and your mobile that it's out of range and suspect a catastrophic system failure, you can go over to the backup county fire department channel, channel 1 there in zone G. The dispatchers keep the backup channels in an unselect mode, but they keep the volume up on them. So if you started coming up calling communications, they should hear you. It might take them a second or two to get flipped over to that screen, but then they would know something is obviously wrong, that you're up over on the backup communications or backup county fire department channel. We have a backup channel for county fire. We have 3 for Fort Wayne fire. We have a backup EMS and 4 backup TAC channels that in this case could be used for fire ground channels should we have to stay a lengthier time on the backup system. I will say our system is very robust. I've been here 30 years and we've only had one failure on our 800 systems over the years. It was actually not this system, it was a previous system, and it was actually a fluke AEP power feed problem that caused it. It wasn't a failure of the radio system itself. But again, we have backup channels here should the need arise to switch off the main system. Zone H, labeled 8 call. These are nationwide 800 megahertz operating channels. Any 800 radio in the nation should have access to these channels. These channels are used for, they are conventional mode. They are not on a trunk system, so you have no emergencies here. But these can be used to work with other agencies or work outside of the range of our radio system. 8 call 90 is just that, it's a calling channel. If you were to get on 8 call 90 now and call for a communications center, in Indiana, typically either the Indiana State Police Post or the Indiana Department of Homeland Security will answer you on 8 call. If you needed to use a repeater, then you would call an 8 call 90 and let them know that you're in the Fort Wayne area. And typically, and we will have a map on this, but in the Fort Wayne area, there is an 8 TAC, and I believe it's 8 TAC 93 in this area would be assigned to you to use, and you can actually communicate on that channel. Again, it's in a conventional repeater mode. Range on it's probably 20-ish miles or so. It's not on a trunk system. Typically would not have connection to a dispatcher, but would be a way to communicate should we need a secondary method for communications. Some of the channels you'll see are labeled with a D, ATAC 91D, ATAC 92D. Those are direct radio to radio short range channels that can also be used should you need another communications path. Looking at zones I, J, K, and L. These are 700 megahertz nationwide interoperability channels. The feds have divvied these up. If you see, some of those are labeled TAC, some are law, some are fire, some are EMS or medic. These are nationwide interoperability channels. They don't use a repeater system. They're typically direct radio to radio channels. Chances of you using these channels are probably slim to none. But they are there should you need to work with an outside agency or maybe Ohio agencies, whatever the case may be. We always talk about 800 megahertz. Our radios these days are 800 and 700 capable. Again, these are in the 700 megahertz range. but these channels are there for interoperability instances. Just an example where these may be used. A couple of years ago, the Fort Wayne PD's PSRT team, which is the Public Safety Response Team, or I guess in easy terms, it's their riot squad. They were asked to help over in Cleveland at the Republican National Convention. So about 50 of our officers were sent over to Cleveland. Obviously, we don't have Cleveland's radio channels programmed into our radios, and nor do they have ours. But they assigned a couple of these 700 megahertz nationwide channels to the Fort Wayne PD officers and their command personnel, so that they could communicate with their command back at Unified Command, and then they could communicate amongst the other police agencies that were there. So yeah, in the 30 years I've been here, like I said, that's been the only use case for them. But again, they are there for instances just as that. Again, to keep in mind, these are conventional or direct type channels, not on the Fort Wayne Allen County system. No emergencies are available on this on these channels. Moving over to Zone M, that's labeled mutual. These are statewide mutual aid channels. I will have a map here shortly in the presentation that will help break this down a little bit further, but I will tell you Allen County is in Region C of the statewide radio system. So labeled here are Region C mutual aid 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are regional mutual aid channels that will work in essentially all of the northeast northeast counties of Indiana that we can communicate with other agencies on. Typically, CMA 4 is reserved for aircraft communications. CMA 1 is typically reserved for state police communications when they're putting out all points bulletins or possible pursuits or things of that nature, which leaves Region C Mutual Aid 2 and 3 available to use should we have an incident that we need to work with Wells County or Whitley County or whatever the case may be. These are on the statewide system. So they have range all throughout the northeast Indiana counties, but again, keep in mind your emergencies do not work here on these channels. Just below that are statewide mutual aid channels. Statewide are just that. They work everywhere in the state of Indiana. These again are on the state radio system or on the APX system. Statewide call is monitored, and typically if you got on statewide call and tried to call a communications center, the Indiana Department of Homeland Security in Indianapolis will answer this, or typically the ISP post in Indianapolis will answer the statewide call as well. And then there are 9 statewide mutual aid frequencies. They're labeled as SW statewide MA1 through MA9 for mutual aid. These are not channels you want to jump on either, but if for some reason you need to communicate with other counties in the area that were outside of the Region C area, the statewide channels, you could ask IPSC for permission or the state police post for permission to communicate on the statewide channels. Zone N is set up for Adams County. So if you are traveling to Adams County for an interoperability response, everything labeled 01, since Adams is the first county in Indiana, they're all coded 01, and then they have a fire, EMS, ops channels, and direct channels. So again, typically if you're responding to Adams County, they would probably tell you what channel they want you to come up on, and once you are on scene, they would have you work with them on those channels. Just below that, Adams County actually falls into Region F of the IPSC or statewide system. So the F mutual aids are listed there 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the same rules apply. Typically FMA1 is reserved for the state police post for pursuits and all points bulletins. FMA4 would typically be air ambulance traffic. Zone O, DeKalb, set up very similar to Adams. Obviously, DeKalb is the 17th county in the state, so everything is coded with 17 beforehand. They have multiple channels there, Central, Auburn Fire, County Fire, Ops channels, and some direct channels, same thing. DeKalb County, if they're going to need you to respond, they should relay to us or our communications center what channel they would like you on. DeKalb County is part of Region C, so again, the Region C mutual aid channels appear here. Huntington County, as we go through this, Zone P, same thing. The highlighted channels are Huntington County related channels if you need to respond there for an incident. And Huntington County falls into Region F as well, so the F mutual aid show up in the Huntington zone. Zone Q for Noble County, laid out the same way. Noble's the 57th county in Indiana, that's the 57 prefix. They have some ops channels, some direct channels, and then they also use some ATAC channels that we talked about earlier, the direct channels for some communication in their area. Zone R is state of Ohio. State of Ohio has a statewide trunk system. They are really kind of 10 years behind the ball with Indiana, but their statewide system is coming up to par very rapidly. So I expect in the future that we will have some mutual aid agreements with the state system so that this zone will change. But those of you on the east side of the county, if you're responding into Ohio, you will use some of the 7 fire direct channels as outlined there in the red box. Zone S, Wells County, same way. We've got Wells County Dispatch and some other dedicated channels there, as well as Wells County is in Zone F with the F mutual aids there after the Wells County channels. Zone T, Whitley County, same way. Whitley's the 92nd county, so they've got 92 prefixes on theirs. Whitley County also falls into Region C of the statewide mutual aid interoperability region, thus the CMA channels listed once again. This completes the channel layout in your radios. I know that is a lot. Technology is great that we have all these options, but I also understand it can be difficult to remember where you need to go and when. But typically when you're responding into other areas, they should give you a channel assignment that you can print the PDFs. I will make sure that all of the departments have the PDFs of this so that you can make channel cheat sheets or whatever for your apparatus or keep with your command vehicles as well. Here's the map I referenced to for the statewide interoperability options. As you look into Northeast Indiana, you'll see the 6 Northeast counties that are in Region C. The Region C mutual aids, or any of the mutual aids, and I'm going to pick on Region C, work in those 6 counties, and technically they will work in one adjacent county as well. That's how the state has them set up to work. But Region C actually includes Allen, Whitley, Noble, DeKalb, LaGrange, and Steuben. We talked about Adams County. You can see they're actually in Region F down below, but this lays out all of the regional mutual aid channels. And again, those counties that you have in your radio have the appropriate regional mutual aid channels listed in those channel zones. I talked about the 8-call and 8-TAC channels. This is a map of the APX system that shows where those channels are located. You can see we have an 8-call repeater here in Fort Wayne that's out at the State Police Post, Post 22. And as well as we have 8-TAC 94. I think I mentioned 93 earlier, but 8-TAC 94 is available on a repeater. Should you need to use that repeater for anything, the State Police Post can be contacted on the 8-call channel, and they can assign the 8-TAC 94 channel for another communications path. And the final map I have, this is just a system map of where all of the tower sites are located for the IPSC or statewide system. Do note that Allen County here only has 1 tower site in Allen County for the IPSC system. The IPSC system does have simulcast cells on it, but Allen County just has a standalone tower. The IPSC system is configured in what's called a smart zone configuration. So you roam typically tower to tower. I can tell you, knowing or talking with some of the guys at East Central, that the IPSC system coverage over on the east side of Allen County is not great and has some holes. But otherwise, most of Allen County is covered by the IPSC system should you need to use that system. That is all I have from the main presentation. I do want to talk quickly, since this is a new system with all of the departments, about the Mock Alert, the fire station alerting system. The Mock Alert system has a back end that's actually located down in communications that communicates with all of the RTUs, or the large white boxes that you see installed in all of the county fire stations. Uh, the information is sent from the dispatch center to the county fire stations to trip your alerting, to open up your PAs in the your public address systems in your stations, as well as some of you have options to kick on lights or timers or whatever the case may be. The mock alert system is on all of the fire positions down in Allen County Communications. It's actually on both county fire dispatch positions as well as the Fort Wayne positions. Fort Wayne has used mock alert for over 10 years, since 2014. New Haven Communications also has 2 positions of mock alert that they have access to. The item I want to point out about the mock alert system, we're actually doing kind of something special with the mock alert system. Since the county fire departments are using 2-tone pagers, the mock alert system is capable of communicating with our Motorola radio consoles to assist our dispatchers in not only alerting the stations, but tripping the 2-tone pagers. These are actually 2 different systems. They're not combined into one. The mock alert system is technically responsible for tripping the station RTUs, or those white cabinets I talked about earlier, to trip your internal tones, open up your public address speaker systems, trip your lighting, timers, whatever the case may be. But to make it simpler for the dispatchers, mock alert has an option that was purchased by the county fire departments to also trip the 2 tones along with the mock alert. So when mock alert is alerting a station, it is sending that packet, that data packet, out to the stations, at the same time communicating with the Motorola radio consoles to trip the appropriate 2 tones for that response. But again, what I want you to keep in mind is they are 2 different systems. We could have a disconnect of one system or the other that may or may not trip the 2 tones or may or may not trip the mock alert. Dispatch has protocols in place. If this happens, if this occurs, we can still trip the 2 tones manually from the dispatch consoles, as well as the mock alert system actually has a main and a redundant server that can be switched on pretty quickly should we have a main server or main back-end failure. Here's actually the screen that the Allen County, Fort Wayne, and New Haven dispatchers are looking at. This happens to be the county fire alerting screen. As you can see, the alerting icons are grouped. East Central's grouped together, Northeast, Northwest, so on and so forth. I'm going to use Northeast Fire for an example. This is set up. Northeast has 3 physical stations. Northeast has elected to either have us send a Northeast Fire Department alert, or Northeast EMS alert, or Northeast All alert. If I was to show an example to alert the Northeast Fire Department, over here on the left, I have what sequences we can use: fire, medical, fire and EMS, specialty, and an all call. If I was to alert the Northeast Fire Department, I would select Northeast Fire. I would select the fire sequence. I would come over and hit send. When I hit send, a timer starts on the screen to let the dispatcher know how much time they have to wait. During that time, what happens is there is a data packet sent to the Northeast Fire cabinets, and since they have 3 stations, it's sent to all 3 of those cabinets. The fire tone is played inside of the stations. Right after that, then the mock alert system communicates with the Motorola radio consoles in dispatch. It then trips the appropriate 2-tone Northeast Fire is elected for us to send, which in this case is a Northeast Fire 2-tone. Once that is completed, the dispatcher will see that the PA timer is 0. They can actually transmit and start to speak the actual verbiage or the dispatch for the Northeast Fire Department. This alerting sequence is true for most departments. However, you'll see East Central is broken down much more for specific medic responses. Northwest has their individual stations being alerted, where Southwest is more just like Northeast, and so on and so forth. So depending on the department you're with, the mock alert alerting is slightly different from district to district.